is one issue, again, pretty much paralleling Highway 90 through New Iberia, then coming up I-49 through Lafayette, and then on up through Alexandria. Still a tropical storm late tomorrow night into early Sunday morning, and then decaying to a low pressure system as we head into Sunday afternoon. But the rains won't be done until after this system is probably even out of the state. So that's going to be the big story with this storm, is going to be the rainfall for sure. Here are all the tropical watches and warnings, mostly warnings. We have tropical storm warnings for all of Acadiana and all the way back to the Texas state line and over to the Mississippi state line. Hurricane warnings in effect for Vermilion, Iberia, St. Mary, Lower St. Martin parishes. I thought we might see hurricane warnings extended to St. Martin or Lafayette parishes. That hasn't happened yet, but could happen. But if it didn't happen this afternoon, it probably won't happen unless we see a significant intensification cycle sometime overnight tonight and tomorrow morning before this starts interacting with land. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that we don't see hurricane conditions, but they are certainly a possibility, especially along the coastal parishes. So in fact, speaking of that, these are the latest tropical storm wind probabilities. This is for winds, sustained winds, greater than 39 miles an hour for at least a minute. That's how we do this. And notice much of Acadiana in the 100% zone. So all of Acadiana is going to see winds gusting 40, 45 minimally. And then we might even see winds sustained even higher than that. In fact, this is just tropical storm winds. Tropical storm winds is just a windy day. Garbage pails get blown over. Lawn furniture gets blown over. But then we get into the more damaging winds, 55 to 73 miles an hour. And notice where we are, just say in Lafayette, we'll pick that with 60 to 70% chance. You get into Iberia and St. Mary Parish, you're pushing 80%, 90% for southeastern portions of St. Mary and lower St. Martin parishes. So this is where the main wind damage is going to be, and that swath goes all the way over to Baton Rouge and down through Houma as well. So this is significant damage here, and then even the risk of hurricane force wind gusts up to 20%. We were barely at 10% up to the I-10 corridor yesterday. Then it dropped down to the coast. Now it's back up to 20% for a good part of Acadiana, and that is relatively significant. Just think about all the days Perillo says there's a 20% chance of rain and you get rain. So you got to watch this as well. So there could be hurricane gusts, and we'll talk more about that and take a look at some of the latest models in just a bit. Let's address storm surge first. Anything in yellow is going to be inundated by storm surge. Mostly it's marsh area, but the water is going to come up 3 feet and in some spots 6 feet. And it's going to be interesting because off to the east, you're going to see mostly southerly winds. Then off of St. Mary Parish, they're going to be southeasterly winds. Then you get into Atchafalaya and Vermilion Bay. It's going to be turning a little bit more easterly. And then back to the west is going to be out of the northeast or out of moving from north to south. So we're going to go with the National Hurricane Center numbers right now, 3 to 5 feet. That does not include the waves that break on top of that 3 to 5 feet. So there's going to be inundation of some areas along the coast. And you can see we're showing a lot more in the way of orange, especially for the coastal marsh of St. Mary Parish from the Cabot area, just near the Franklin area, low-lying areas around Franklin. You're going to have to be on the lookout. And again, over by Morgan City, Stevensville, and you know the Atchafalaya is already high here, so more water around everywhere in the Morgan City, Stevensville area, and then back to the west we go. As we get to the Sippermore Point area, again, looking for 3 feet of inundation at the very least, not including the waves. So I would think 3 to 5 feet, still a very good call here. Weeks Island will be surrounded by some inundation areas, the same with Avery Island as we go to the west. And I thought this is really cool. If you look over toward the Delcombe area, we're going to have water come up the Delcombe Canal, so we're going to have flooding right where the boats come in. And notice, even around Lake Peigneur, you're going to see the water come up a little bit, and you're going to see the low-lying areas around the localized lakes coming up just a bit. So that I thought was quite interesting. Bostonia, I think you're going to be okay. Banker, I think you're going to be okay. But as you get south of Highway 14, there's going to be certainly inundations. It's not going to be a Hurricane Rita situation. It's not going to be a Hurricane Lily or Ike situation, but certainly significant, and the most significant surge that we have seen since that 2008 eliminate Hurricane Ike. So we haven't seen this in a good 10 years, 11 years. Again, some inundation levels in around the intracoastal city area over toward Forked Island. And as we get to the west, this is the most interesting part because the winds are going to be out of the north here. The water is going to be moving offshore. So any inundations we see are actually coming from Grand Lake, Pecan Island, where the water in the marsh is trying to move to the south. So I thought that was pretty interesting overall. So here's the latest European model, which shifted westward with the 12Z run. That's the 7 o'clock in the morning run. We don't get another one of these runs till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. So we have to live with this. One of the most accurate global models we have, and has been pretty much in line with the National Hurricane Center forecast. But this model is a little west of the forecast line. So we got to remind you, it's one model run, one model projection. It's not an official forecast, but it gives us a good visualization on how things are going to transpire. And here we have the hurricane here, or the tropical storm. Not much rain, but a fair bit of wind north of this system. So the wind's going to come up tomorrow morning, but then the heavy-duty rains will be coming in during the course of the late morning into the afternoon hours. And this is when we're going to start to see the flooding rains, devastating flooding rains, perhaps catastrophic flooding rains. I was just talking with Andrew Clay. This is the worst threat we've seen since the August 2016 flood, and it may be on par with it for some folks because this is a slow-moving storm and we stay in these repeated rain bands. This is midnight tomorrow night still, and then we get into Sunday morning. Still the threat of very intense rainfall rates from Lafayette on northeastward, then eventually spreading into Mississippi. But even as we go into Sunday afternoon, these trailing rain bands will continue. The threat of flooding will continue into Sunday, although not as widespread, but there's going to be isolated more trouble spots as we go into Sunday, and then even into Sunday night, and this is Monday morning. There could still be some heavy rain bands around about the area. Then we transition Monday afternoon to scattered activity, and then Tuesday, rain chances down to 30-40%, and we'll be back to a summer scenario. So here's the 3-kilometer NAM model. This is a higher resolution model. It's been out to lunch on intensity over the last couple of days, but now it's come back to reality, and it's a little east of the European model and pretty much following the National Hurricane Center. Timing may be a little bit different, but you can see landfall right here, right around, looks like the Salt Point area here, Sycamore Point. So the wind's coming in, some rain shower activity, but I like this model because it really depicts showers, thunderstorms, and in this case, there will be squalls. They'll be associated with the tropical system as we get into tomorrow morning. So if you have any last-minute things to do, even though the winds are going to be coming up tomorrow, I think tomorrow morning, early in the morning, you can take care of those things. But watch out when the rains and the tropical showers come in. That's when the wind gusts will start to be on the increase, and then comes the heavy rain on the eastern and southern flank of this system. Initially on the eastern flank, and then it's going to be on the southern end. And notice the center of the circulation on this model, right with the National Hurricane Center, just somewhere between Lafayette and Breaux Bridge, perhaps out towards Butte-La Rose or Henderson. We're going to see the center of this circulation. We don't think it's going to be organized enough where we have an eye or eye wall where the sun comes out, but the winds will be relatively light in this area for a period of time. And then when you have the rain squalls, that's when you're going to see 60, 70 mile an hour wind gusts, Morgan City to Baton Rouge, and we're going to show you those winds coming up in just a bit. The storm working its way pretty much up along the I-49 corridor here, but look at these heavy rain bands. So the most likely areas that are going to be flooded are going to be initially the southeastern portions of Acadiana, from maybe eastern St. Martin Parish through all of Iberia Parish, and certainly St. Mary Parish is probably going to get clobbered the most with the wind, the flooding rains, the torrential rains, perhaps historical rains. Hopefully we're not talking historical, but they're going to be destructive. That means water in your home, and catastrophic, maybe several feet of water in your home. And then the storm continues to work its way northward. Here we are Sunday morning. We still see those tropical rain bands moving from southwest to the northeast, so we get that training effect still going on, although not as concentrated. We will be looking at rainfall rates on the order of 2 to 4 or 3 to 4 inches per hour. You get that for 2 hours. I don't care how good your drainage is, you're going to have street flooding and water coming up halfway in your yards. There's no doubt about it. You get it for 3 hours, then you have water bucket knocking up at your door most likely, and in some cases in your homes if you're in a low-lying area. And my rule of thumb here, if you flooded in 2016, anywhere from Lafayette on eastward, you may flood this time around as well. I would give it a better than 50-50 chance. So that's the most unfortunate thing, especially if you had a foot, 2 feet of water. You may have water in your home this time, may not be as much, but that is certainly a possibility, and I can't give you much better guidance than that because we're just going to have to wait for the storm to come in, see how these tropical rain bands come in, and later tonight, tomorrow, it's just going to be working the radar, and we'll forget about the models and just watch the radar trends and watch for tornadoes and the damaging winds with those squalls. So here's the European model output. Again, notice through early tomorrow morning, not a whole lot of rain in the area, but it will pile on quickly as we get into late morning into the afternoon hours. Here we are stopping it at 10 o'clock tomorrow night, and notice the rainfall already in the 5 to 10 inch range across the region, more offshore, and then we go into Saturday night into Sunday morning. Then we start pushing that 10 to 15 inch rainfall across the area, and then you add on the rainfall for the rest of Sunday into Monday. We'll stop it here at Tuesday morning because everything should be done by that time, and storm total rainfall, a large swath of 10 to 15 inches of rain. Again, this area of cream corresponds to 15 inches of rain. You get these areas of red, that's 20 inches of rain. And again, the specific numbers for the specific towns are going to change. Do not say, oh, Lafayette's going to get 17 inches of rain no matter what. It may be 10, it may be 22. You can see how it changes across the board, across the region, and I think the rainfall rates are even going to be higher over toward Morgan City, over toward Macomb, and certainly Baton Rouge. I think anybody just west of Lake Pontchartrain will have a shot at 10 to 15 inches of rain, and it may go as far west as the western sections of Acadiana. You can see some very high rain totals of a foot or more. Eunice, Ville Platte. Maybe the model changes later on tonight, but we have additional support that I'm going to show you in just a bit, and the rainfall rate's still pretty high. And then you get back to Lake Charles, Orange, Southeast Texas, and not a drop of rain may fall over by the Houston area. But again, we have some of these hot spots showing up down here south of Pecan Island. That's 25 inches. So again, when we see that, we know the model is telling us that this is a very, very active system. It's going to be slow moving enough that it's going to produce rainfalls 10 to 15 inches just about guaranteed over a large area, and isolated spots maybe 20 to 25. Here's the high resolution rapid refresh model, but this only gets us till 2 o'clock tomorrow night. Because this is a high resolution model. As we get future runs, we'll be able to expand this to 5 to 10 o'clock in the morning Sunday, and we'll start to see it's pretty much the same what the European model is showing, and this is just the rainfall over the next, here we are at 7 o'clock, 5 hours, 7 hours, 31 hours from now. This is the total rainfall in a 31-hour period, and you can see some of these big numbers showing up. There's some red corresponding to 20 inches again. So 5 to 10 inches of rain easily tomorrow night. Isolated areas 15, and this model has actually got the heavier rain axis pretty much pointing toward Abbeville, Lafayette, Opelousas, and then working its way northward. So we'll see how this comes in through the nighttime hours. That's why we're doing updates at the top of every hour so we can give you the very latest projections on rainfall. So winds, what about winds? This is a combination. I try to put together something that would tell the story. RPM model has been terrible on, it usually is on tropical systems, so we've been using the Euro, the GFS, the high resolution rapid refresh model, also the NAM model, but the NAM model was too low on pressures, but it's come in line. So this is all the numbers that you see here is what the NAM model is projecting for wind gusts. Gusts, not sustained winds, but wind gusts, and the actual lines here, what we call the wind particles. This is actually the European model, the 9-kilometer European model. The NAM model is a 3-kilometer. That's that high-resolution model I just showed you. So winds gusting, they've been gusting to 30 already today. That's where they're going to be tonight as well. we get to tomorrow morning, don't see a change, but I think we start seeing that change, especially the southeastern parishes. You can see, say, Martinville, New Iberia, down through Jeanerette, we're pushing 40-mile-an-hour winds. Notice the highest winds on this particular run, this is going to change in the next run, on the other side of the Atchafalaya Basin, where the winds are pushing gusts at 50. And my rule of thumb is once you get wind gusts going to 50, 55, that's when you start seeing tree limbs down. Then you're going to have that heavy rainfall, and then you need less wind to knock down trees and branches, so expect widespread power outages, and we'll talk more about that in just a bit. So here we are Saturday morning and then Saturday afternoon, because the center of circulation coming right over here. Notice there the winds aren't that high, but around the periphery the winds are going to be quite high, but this high wind area could be shifted over here into St. Mary Parish, so we'll have to wait and see. So wind a little bit less of a concern, but it's going to be knocking branches down. Take a survey of the trees around your home. Water oaks susceptible to falling because they grow so fast, they come down fast in tropical systems. That's been my experience over the last 30 plus years. So as we go into Saturday afternoon, you'll see the NAM model has the center of circulation a little bit farther to the east, but we'll still see 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds. And what we're not forecasting, what we don't see, if there are tropical rain bands wrapping around here, you're going to see the 50, 60-mile-an-hour gusts. And notice the gusts pushing hurricane intensity in the heaviest rain bands on the outer fringes of the easternmost rain bands for tomorrow off to the east. And we'll see those 50, 60, 70-mile-an-hour gusts. And that's what we have to expect here as well. We're not that good on hurricane forecasting, even 24 hours out. And here we are 24 hours out for tomorrow. We could have a change by 20 or 30 miles, and 20 or 30 miles makes a big difference between 60-mile-an-hour winds and winds in the 30 or 40-mile-an-hour wind range. Again, you can see the center of the circulation on the NAM model here. The European is a little bit west here, but it gives you an idea. And here come the southerly winds with the storm surge coming in overnight tonight through tomorrow. Whatever water comes in is going to stay in through Sunday. So you're going to have that high water inundating the coastal areas. And if you have a camp down at Zippermore Point, the water comes up. You're not going to be able to get to the camp until maybe Monday or Tuesday at the earliest. So keep that in mind. Anybody along the coastal areas. And then you see the winds beginning to die down as we head tomorrow night, but still there will be gusts even down to Pecan Island, 40, 50-mile-an-hour winds through Sunday morning, and a few gusts showing up there in the 50-mile-per-hour range with some of those heavier tropical rain bands. So we're going to have tropical storm conditions starting tomorrow morning, and they may not end until Sunday evening. So a solid 24 to 36 hours. That would be pretty much in line with what we had with Hurricane Rita. We had 36 hours or better of tropical storm force winds, but not as strong as Hurricane Rita, we hope. So tides rising. This is the main graphic here in the timeline. Tides rising overnight tonight. Storm surge near and east of where that center makes landfall is going to be 3 to 6 feet. If you live 5 feet or below, 5 feet above sea level or below that, you're going to be inundated or surrounded by water at least through Sunday, as we mentioned. Rainfall, the heaviest rains begin mid-morning tomorrow, continue through tomorrow night, and sometime late Sunday. We'll say 5 to 15 inches area-wide. I think that's a done deal. I'm extremely confident with that forecast number, and unfortunately, I'm fairly confident there's going to be isolated areas that see catastrophic flooding, 15 to 25 inches, and maybe most of that comes in a 12-hour time frame. Nobody can handle that. That's going to lead to flooding. So, and I'm one of you guys that is worried about the flooding as well. Prepared for sustained winds, 35 to 50 miles an hour. Make sure all the trash cans are pulled in, lawn furniture, basketball goals. I had to carry mine down the street during Hurricane Rita, during the height of the storm, because it blew down the street. So you think about that. Gusts 65 to 75 miles an hour, certainly possible near the squalls, near the center, downed trees, branches, power lines. Be careful with the power lines. And again, once the winds kick up and then the rains kick in, it's time to hunker down. Again, you want to just be on the lookout for flooding, though. If you are in a low-lying area, maybe you want to prepare to go stay somewhere else. If you live in a mobile home, anywhere in Acadiana, you want to stay somewhere else because they are most certainly susceptible to 50 or 60 mile an hour winds, and you don't want to be hurt there as well. Power lines will be down, and I would would expect widespread power outages. This storm track pretty similar to Hurricane Lily, Hurricane Andrew, and I can tell you with Hurricane Lily, 97 to 100% of all of Acadiana was without power as of 10 o'clock the night that Lily passed through. Not going to be as strong as Lily because we had a lot of 100, 110 mile an hour gusts, but I would expect 70, perhaps 80% of the area to lose power for some period of time. I can't speak for the utility companies. They would be the one to tell you how prepared they are and what they expect, but I do know LUS has a very aggressive pruning program, and fortunately a lot of folks, if you're lucky, like me, at my house, I just happen to be on a hospital grid, so that is good news. Know your grid before you buy your home. I didn't do that, and I just got lucky there. Not lucky, though, with respect to flooding and tornado risk. There will be an enhanced risk, mainly east of the center of the storm, but that's almost a back burner issue after all is said and done. So here we go. We have the hurricane tropical storm conditions for tomorrow, and then things will quiet down as we go into next week. Fortunately, back to a summer scenario, but the next 24, 36, perhaps 48 hours are going to be quite rough. We want you to stay with us at KATC, KATC.com, KATC social media, and be prepared. Get the KATC app. We broadcast live through that app, and also the KATC weather app. That's it from the KATC Weather Lab. We're going to see you again coming up tonight at 8 o'clock, so we'll see you then, and be safe.